beautiful conversation. As always, I thank you all for taking the time to join me either live in person or at your convenience. And as always, if you don't mind to pass this along to anyone you think might be interested, that was very much appreciated. Well, the guest I have today is so awesome. She was on last year that she's so awesome. We decided to have her come back. And I've known Shellie quite a few years. We've known each other a long time, Shellie Enteen,
Oh,
and knew each other in Florida, then connected up here in the Carolinas. And Shellie's just an amazing person on the planet. And most recently, her biggest endeavor has been at writing a trilogy of books, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But before we go there, I'd like to say hey and welcome, Shellie.
thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, good to have you. So, there's for the audience that might not know you, a lot of people probably don't. You're a minister, you are an aromatherapist, you are an astrologer, you're an author. What am I missing here? Bach flower remedies, a teacher, a mystical goddess. What else?
Well, I actually have a Substack now. You know what Substack is?
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
and I'm calling it Moments in the Flow because I
Mm,
had so many things show up in my life. I never went out after any of this.
mm-hmm,
All of
mm-hmm.
this came to me somehow.
Yeah.
And so it was like supposed to be, I mean, had the first thing that was unusual that you in the list was the astrology. And, until I got back from living in England for a couple of years and, wondering why did I go there and why did that relationship end? I was engaged to an English medical student,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And very straight, we were in the pub, drinking beer. So I was like, completely not into anything. And then I get a job at one of the biggest PR firms in Manhattan. And I walk in my first day. Oh, and account executives were women.
Oh,
It
wow.
was 1975.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Two
impressive.
men owned it, and there was a big office manager who was a man. And there were two psychics in human resources. But really, right? So I walk in, and on my desk is a chart wheel
Oh
with
my,
hieroglyphics on it.
oh my
And I
gosh.
kind of know that there's this thing, astrology. Like I've played with like, getting a reading from, a computer thing, And I said to my one of the women I was going to be working for, I said, "What's this?" And she told me. And I said, "What does it say?" So she said, "Well, I'm just starting." They were all taking classes
Oh my
in
goodness.
one of the two occult, it was all occult then,
Oh, sure. I
occult
remember.
bookstores. Yeah. So, and they were taking classes. She said, "Take this other account exec for lunch and she'll tell you." And the only reason I got to start studying was because I was asking questions about how she was seeing it. And most people don't, most people just want to know. They came
Yeah,
for a
give me a reading.
reading. So she takes me to this occult bookstore that was walking distance. So like I'm looking at life now as like a web, as they
Hmm.
say. And there's this web in front of you, but you can't always see the web. But you are going to be walking right into it. You're going to be walking. So I got very into it, and somebody gave me the name of a person. I studied with him one on one, at least 2 years
Goodness.
before I felt, and this is like, today everything's so fast.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody's got to do it right away, and I can learn it all. I don't really agree with that because I'm still learning it.
exactly. Right.
So, and from that, the Bach flowers, because I was looking at people's issues and I couldn't help.
Hmm.
So I asked him, but I was in a meditation school by then.
Oh,
And he said, and so it just so happened that the New York rep for Bach Flowers was doing a class in
of
2 weeks.
course.
And,
Of course.
it's like when you are in on the path as you know,
Mhm.
it's just going to start rolling. It's kind of like you know you're in the right direction when it just opens for you. And when I
That
finally got around to writing the book about a Druid priestess, I already had a lot of priestess tools.
obviously,
So
yeah.
I was doing body work because I had been engaged to a chiropractic student, and we thought I would, be perfect. I'll work in the office,
Hmm.
I had that. And then I got into the Jinshin Jitsu aspect of it right around the time that I met you.
Right, I remember.
Also came to me without, oh, really. So this, Reiki, yeah. So I have this toolkit, right?
That's very awesome. Well, I'd never heard that story before. So isn't that interesting? And wow. Well, good for you. So and good for us that you've been so blessed with all these synchronicities on your path, I
First part of my life, just what you would expect a girl growing up in the 50s to be like.
yeah. And then the second
And
part,
then the 60s, just
yeah.
what you'd expect a girl in the 60s to. Yeah. So no one would have, I mean, I would have never imagined.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Well, that was kind of like a divine intervention, though, because you weren't even looking. You weren't even knowing what it was like to surrender. You were just there. And so the universe was definitely wanting you to be on this path.
And I think one of the greatest gifts that I was so lucky was that my family was unusual to begin with because we had a non-practicing Irish Catholic marry a non-practicing Jew and give birth to my father. And then he married a very much practicing Southern Baptist that he met in Miami.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I grew up in a home with all of these people, and I was not looking at prejudice early.
Hmm.
It was like an amazing thing. And then when I got into these weird things, they were
Yes.
very weird at the time, my whole family embraced it, all of them. Instead of thinking, well, they might have thought I was like weird, but they all wanted readings.
Yeah, yeah.
Even
I'll
the
bet.
Southern Baptists and wanted readings. I mean,
Yeah,
it was like,
secretly in the back room, right?
well,
I see.
maybe they didn't tell everyone, but
Yeah,
it wasn't like I got shunned. Or
yeah. Well, that's interesting. I have something of the like in common. I grew up in a Methodist church. My parents met in that church, and but my mother, in her probably 30s, 40s, became interested in astrology and readings and all sorts of things. So I remember as a kid,
different.
there was
That's
a fella
really different.
at the city market selling vegetables, where she used to go get the produce. And this guy, his name was Catfish, and he would do readings for my mother. And then she'd get all these
Wow.
astrology books. And I mean, when we were little kids, we had Ouija boards, we had those eight
That,
balls, everything. So it
yeah.
just was very natural to us. So when, I can see through that open-minded environment, I went into what I came into without much fear, a little bit of trepidation, but because, it was a little, behind you, but still, it was
Well,
still
I
thought
think
of
a
as
little behind me, you were luckier.
yeah, but it was still thought of as woo woo, and people didn't know what the heck all this was. And you and I, you're very familiar, I'm sure, as well as I was, uh, the Crystal Garden down in Boynton Beach.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
Margaret's place.
Margaret's.
And yeah, and I started going there when I'd go every evening after golf, after I was done teaching, because it was real close to where I was teaching. And whatever they were offering, I took it. And so I sort of got a glimpse of everything. Do you do tarot? Are you into
I
that?
do. I do card readings. Yeah. Lately, I've been doing a 3 deck reading.
Oh, wow.
So I'll use the regular Rider-Waite tarot, which is what it's loaded with symbols, so it speaks. It's like astrology is hieroglyphics. It's
Mm-hmm.
hieroglyphic language, so that it's like, the Egyptians, you get a whole concept.
Right.
So, I get that from that deck. And then I add, another deck that's simple. And then, I get three levels and angels as the third deck
Oh, very
that are
cool.
with you on it. And it's really, it's wonderful. I like doing those, but I
Yeah.
like doing everything I do. That's the
Well,
good thing.
just because there's people probably watching, like, I want to get a reading, or I'd like to, what have you, get a chart done or buy your book, which we're going to talk about here. I
Hmm.
will put it in the notes. I'll put all the links. Everything would be on your website, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
well, yes, you can contact me through my website. I have a page that is astrology readings page,
Mhm. Okay.
and my books are on there on the books page.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you would, if you wanted a card reading, you would use the email contact.
Okay, very good. So
Except,
I'll put all that, excuse me, on this page when we're
thank
done.
you.
Yeah. So obviously, tell me about Wales and how'd you end up over there? Did you go with the fellow? Did you meet him when you were there? And you obviously, that has been, as long as I've known you, a big, huge part of your heart and who you are.
Yeah, well, it was in the early 70s. I was living in London with an Englishman.
Mm,
I met him in New York, and it was a very strange meeting, of course. Like we were looking at each other, not knowing that we were both meeting his sister to go to the
mm,
beach. So it was again faded, but definitely not a place for me to stay at that time. I was thinking about it earlier. We have grown up in a time where women's rights have changed so much, and now they want us, to go back sometimes. But, we don't really want to do that. But when I was living in New York City, when I met him, I was out of college and everything already. And I went to this totally different culture where I was giving a little dinner for he and I were hosting at my flat for some of his fellow friends, students at dinner. And after dinner, I was in the living room with, I was going to say lounge, that's what they call it there. I was in the living room with them, and
mm-hmm.
I was in the conversation. And Alan said, "Shellie, I'm going to come and help you do the washing up." So I thought, oh, that's nice. So the minute we got into the kitchen to do the dishes, he said, "Why were you talking?" All right. So they were still in this consciousness of like the men go to have their brandy and cigars,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
you don't say anything. So that was really not, I mean, I grew up, that wasn't happening in New York
Yeah, that
City.
wouldn't happen in many
So
places here. Yeah.
it was like, are you kidding? I'm not supposed to be talking? Okay. I mean, and plus, there was just it was the path. It got me there so that I would have a love of England itself. I
Mhm,
knew the
mhm.
British people, I knew things and I felt things, but Wales, I didn't even know we had Welsh ancestry until my father was up here with me at his assisted living room, and I saw a picture
Oh,
that I'd
wow.
never seen before. It was a small picture, and I saw him with this little boy with his mommy. But there was this woman standing there, this older woman, and it used to take a long time to get a picture done. So people often had this like already picture already. And my father goes, "Nellie was Welsh." And I said, "I wouldn't know that. I don't even know who Nellie is."
Yeah, yeah. So who's Nellie?
My grandmother, it's my
Oh,
mother's
wow.
mother. All
Mm-hmm.
I knew was the Irish part.
I'll be darned.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was already writing. And when the woman on the stranger on the train told me that Arthur was in Wales and I had to go to Wales, I mean, I went there in 99 because I was on an astrology workshop and I was going back for part two. And I had a friend who at that time was living in Glastonbury on the slope of the Tor. And she took me across the bridge to Caerleon. She said Arthur was in Caerleon. That's where Arthur was. whales, you know. I was like-
Wow. Yeah.
But once I was in the hologram of this, what she said, that's what got me to start to write the book. So it wasn't until like a year after my father passed, 2013, that one of your people that you know, I get to blank on names. She and her husband, and her name is unusual and it starts with Gorin. Okay,
Sure. Go on. Yeah.
Gorin Brooks. I was on the phone with her one day and she got me in touch with my guides
Mm.
over having a wrist problem. She said, they're pulling on you, they're pulling on you. And I'm like, and they were guides. I never had that experience before. I was hearing not sounds. I am more like it's like a clairaudience when I hear. It's not a literal hearing. And the first thing they said was, you must go to Wales. And they were apparently involved with this writing of this book, which started in January of 2000 and didn't, you know, part two and everything didn't get going until 2013 because I was very busy. My life was not the life of, I mean,
Right.
COVID helped this book take place, you
Yeah.
know, because
Exactly.
I was alone. And yeah, but Wales, wow. I was just, if they would have given me a house, I was at the retreat center that was across the lake from the Snowdonia Mountains and Mount Snow.
Mm.
And then my bedroom had the mountains in the window at night. And I was just, I mean, the energy was
Yeah, you were
just
home.
beautiful. I mean, I just hope they don't ruin it now that everybody's finding out about it. You know, there's more people.
Right. Yeah, interestingly enough, and this will sort of segue into what we were talking about earlier. Well, I first want to say, you say, I hope they don't ruin it with all the people. Well, we're seeing that here in our part of the woods too.
That's why
Change in 17 years is, 18 years is remarkable. And I'm just seeing the growth and they're putting up, well, God bless them. It's just,
downtown Greenville.
yeah, downtown Greenville, which is a fabulous place. They've done it as well as they could do it there, though. I mean, that's a beautiful city, but it's crowded. I mean, everywhere. And Hendersonville is bursting at the seams as well. And from the here to Asheville, as you know, but I digress. You say that when you hope that they don't ruin Wales. Well, a mutual friend of ours, Bonnie, has just returned from there. We were talking about
Yeah.
that. And she said that she so much appreciated their appreciation for life, so much different than ours, just
Oh,
about more,
yes.
they're so much more conscious and aware and more in tune with each other and nature.
Good-hearted, many of them. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when I was living in England, I did meet one girl from Wales. She was a medical student with Alan, but they didn't, the English didn't like the Welsh, and so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I never thought of it, and I remember even hearing that they were dangerous and you couldn't understand a word they said.
Oh, wow.
So when I was getting off, the bus, I went to Heathrow and then I took the bus out to Cardiff to hook up with the tour. I was thinking that, oh, it's going to be, unbelievably the opposite. I mean, incredibly different.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and a lot of sheep.
Yeah.
Probably Ireland was like that too, was it?
I loved it. Yeah. I mean, with the exception of Dublin, everything was exactly as you would have expected it. I mean, there were a couple of tourist areas we went to, but again, they weren't crazy or anything. But we really fell in love with Ireland. And, thank goodness to Ahanu. He had
That's right.
suggested that we go, another awesome guy, Angel,
Yeah.
Ahanu and his wife, Angel Rose. They had suggested we go to, oh my goodness.
Newgrange.
Newgrange. I just, and that was a spectacular part of our trip, and I'd never heard of it. And of course, now it's come into my, field from many angles, but that was spectacular. And there's just so much history and beauty and just kind of a slower pace. And I feel like, we were chatting also earlier about how grateful we are that we were able to grow up in a, I would say, civil, normal environment, whatever that means. But it was just,
Lucky.
I think, to be honest, as much as I'm, a user of this right here,
Mhm, mhm.
here's Tootsie. But anyway, uh, I can see how it has completely taken us over,
Yeah,
everything in every way. And of course, now we're looking at we were talking about the AI, which is such a big part of what we're moving into right now. And I don't think people even think through you were talking about, you don't even have to write your own book anymore. Just throw some ideas out there to AI and they'll do it better than we ever could. I don't,
they couldn't write the ones I wrote, though.
well, that's true. That is,
AI would not give you that.
yep, well, that is true. And we'll, but and I definitely want to get into your books, but
Yeah, but
it
there
is,
is that place of humanity
mhm,
that AI can't get. They can do beautiful writing.
mhm, right. But no, I hear your point. I mean, they can't get to the soul and the heart of it for sure, because there is no soul in AI, and
That we know of.
not that we know of. And I know that we were talking about I was mentioning Greg Braden and how
Yeah.
he's talks a lot about this and the dangers. I don't like that word, but dangers of what could happen, and so many people's willingness to just, okay, take it on. And you are, again, going back to your, you're a, besides astrology, you're a Reiki master, you're into aromatherapy, Bach remedies, natural healing, which,
Yes.
again, this whole, forget about Western medicine or AI medicine or whatever the heck it is. Again, people are so willing to do that rather than doing the inner work and the natural things.
Yeah, the thing about we were talking, and you said you wanted to get in touch into this, the fact that we're living in the age of energy. Yeah.
Right.
And so energy, everything is on a spectrum, right? So there's the highest level, let's say, of positivity, and there's the lowest level of negativity, and every place in between.
Mm-hmm.
So like everything is on almost like an elevator,
Mm-hmm.
and like we as people are on that elevator. Um, but there can be energy being used in a highest way and energy being used in the lowest level,
Right.
right? And I think that some of the things that worry me a lot are the brain chip.
Mm.
And so, they promote it, well, he got this chip and now he can speak two languages. So people don't think about what else they can do with the chip in
Mm-hmm.
your brain. They don't like go further. That is typical of human mind, I've found, is we need, a container that doesn't break, plastics.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. But nobody thinks, how do you get rid of it? Does it break down? Does it do
Right.
anything else? It's very human nature to not expand into that. And that is the problem with AI. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it can do fabulous surgery
Mm-hmm.
because it's detached and you don't have to worry about it being tired that day
Mm-hmm.
or whatever,
Yeah.
leaving a tool in you or something,
Yeah,
probably,
exactly. Cutting off
but
the wrong leg, I've heard those nightmares.
but getting any compassion, if there's any compassion to be had, I don't know if you could get that. But I think, they're definitely getting people to the point where they'll be signing up to get them.
Oh, sure.
Like you sort of said that to me, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely. And people are, they think it's the next latest and greatest. I mean, they're talking about immortality, all of these things. And I find that the more we surrender so willingly to all the technology, we're losing our innate ability to heal, to be creative, to be compassionate and loving. People are becoming numb, and we do have the inner technology, which Greg speaks of, and so many others as well. And the more we just here, take it, take it, take it, it's
Right.
slowly but surely chiseling that away if we're not careful. And where do we get to the point of no return? There's also the scary part.
I think we are at a point of no return.
Hmm.
It's just how fast the acceleration will be
Yeah.
because it's out there now. I mean, they're even worried about how they're kind of developing in ways they didn't expect them to develop and getting like, we might have seen a movie when we were younger, 2001, A Space Odyssey, where the astronaut suddenly discovers that the big computer that's running everything has its own agenda.
Hmm.
Open
Hmm.
the door, Hal. Not opening the door. Open the door, Hal. You can't get back
Yeah.
into the spaceship, right?
Right. That was some
So
movie.
that was a prescient thought that, that's possible.
Yeah.
And so, like I was saying to you earlier, I'm really grateful that I had so many years of life without that,
Hmm.
without
Right.
that worry, or even, like what's happening, the tremendous imbalance in the elements, which is causing the climate
Oh, yeah.
disasters, right? And people, with the heating up, people are boiling up. People are boiling over.
Right.
And so, one of the things we forget is that we have this incredible thing. It's called our vision and our will. So I say what I say, and then I do other things in my visioning. I try to look at what I'd like to see, what I would rather have happen. Now, this
Right.
principle, you know it well.
Hmm.
So it's like it's a work in progress. Like I don't want to go into the fear because I know that is going to weaken me and I'm going to feed that.
Exactly.
Wherever thought. This is the metaphysical old principle of the occult times
Hmm.
said thought creates energy.
Hmm.
Energy follows thought. Wherever thought is held, energy is focused. And that sounds really simple, but it's like in our body, all the cells are listening to where our thought is focused
Right.
and
Right.
energy is held.
Exactly.
And that's the premise of the Bach flower remedies also, is that's an energy medicine
Hmm.
only.
Right.
And it doesn't treat a disease. It treats the vibrational rate of the mind of the person.
Hmm. Well, and that's the premise, I think, of a lot of ancient healing, Chinese medicine. It's all energetic. It's
Yes.
about flow and opening up and the circuits, and not masking them, but actually getting to the core of it. And, even uh, it's what the acupuncture idea is to put that little needle and it opens up that channel. So really healing is innate within us all, if we could just work with the energy field of it. And I believe the highest form of healing is energetic. We don't have to succumb to all of this technology, which I know it's again, it's that fine line. There is a purpose and it does wonderful things, but there's also, where do we cross the line with that as well?
What you just said about the needle with acupuncture. Like when I studied Jitsu, which is hands on to the fewer points, but the energy of the human. I met someone who is very involved in the aromatherapy field now, David Crow, and he was an acupuncturist. And I read his book and I was surprised to find out that when he was studying with the guys up in the mountains of the Himalayas, that's an interesting trip, um, they would go into meditation before they saw a client and get their energy at a certain level because the metal was going to transfer their energy into the flow of the other person. And when I studied Jitsu later, they were saying that this was the older way before the metal,
Oh, wow.
that these are like jumper cables of your own energy connecting to energy. So
Yeah, I love
it really is all energy, but this is,
that.
we can't see it.
Well, but I think that it's not about seeing it. It's more about the knowing and the trust and the experience of it.
And that's it. You just said the word. You have to trust that because you can't see it. And you know how many people say, you have to show me, right?
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it, right?
And my guides knew that I had that kind of skepticism, I'm sure, because I look back and I say, wow, I was in a school of light work meditation, working with color and just trusting that the color was there doing it. And then the guy comes to speak, who was the person who founded the school. It was called Actualism, and they're really only in California now. It's called Actual Design now. Wonderful work. And he was sitting there. And while he was sitting there, I knew the first basic colors. And I knew that emerald green was a color that had to do with speaking on a high frequency, speaking truth and being able to reach people. And I'm just like sitting in the audience, and all of a sudden I look up at him and he's surrounded with emerald green, and I'm like, hey, going like this, going like, and it's still there, I'm like turning away, it's still there. And then he opens his mouth and he says, so, when I was coming to speak to you tonight, I thought I would surround myself with emerald green.
Oh, wow.
So they showed me.
Oh, yeah, I
So
know
with,
exactly.
so with a lot of things that I
You got the
do,
feedback.
they showed me something also, so that the little skeptical, I don't know, is it really true? I mean,
Well, wasn't it Wayne Dyer's book? We always say, I'll believe it when I see it. And he says you'll see it when you believe it.
that's true.
But I do believe there's energies and forces and angels that are here to help
Oh,
us move
yes.
beyond that, and just have to be create a little opening, for that to happen. But you've had some amazing experiences that have, I think, empowered your uh, position, your trust, and enabled you to move forward. And this book it's a trilogy actually. And so I know it's been a labor of love. They're beautiful books. They're actually, let's see, The Last Priestess, The Priestess of the Realms, and Priestess of the Prophecy. And it's now you're complete with that, right? There is no sneak four out there or
There
tap the.
might be a prequel about another priestess.
Oh, wow.
It seems like there might be one, but
Wow.
this is a complete life story. It's really, I say it's a memoir.
Wow.
She told me her life from the day she
Wow.
was born.
And interesting. So who is she, and what is the uh what's going on? I mean, I know that the priestess prophecy, she's a seer. How
Well,
did it
what's
come
going
to you?
on is the woman on the stranger on the train, when she told me Arthur was in Wales, she asked me if I had read The Mist of Avalon. I said, yes, of course. And she said, well, that was, 1980, 1970, late 70s. Well, that went a long way to humanizing the character of Morgan Le Fay. But
Mm,
someday, and she was pointing at me like, I'm pointing at you now. And I'm like, and she didn't know anything about me really. Someday someone is going to write a book about Nimue, and then the truth will be told. And I read all this stuff. I read, everything Arthurian I could get my hands on.
Mhm.
Nimue was evil. So here my mind is thinking, why would anyone want to spend time with her? She was a young woman. She seduces Merlin. He's an old guy, and she gets all his wisdom, and then she locks him in a crystal cave. So the woman just says, well, you really should go to Caerleon because there's a pub there where Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote The Lady of Shalott. And so Lorena McKennitt was one of my favorites. She still is one of my favorite to listen to as music. And she sang a version of that poem on the
Mm.
album I was listening to. It was my favorite song.
Oh my goodness.
So it was like a hook, right? So once I got to Caerleon, my return trip, um, this is what happened is like I was sitting in my house and it was before you were like really doing computer. So I had a long legal pad and I started to take this down. And this is what she said. And I don't hear here. I just was inspired, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am Nimue, or so the storytellers call me, unless I am Vivienne, the Lady of the Lake, or another name of their own device. Of these false names, I prefer Nimue as it speaks of memory, and
Mm.
that is where I dwell, in memories of an age they cannot truly capture, but which I know well. Now, this is what they call the Dark Ages, the Druid Dark Ages. So she starts talking about how she was the last priestess to join the circle of 9 priestesses who served the great mother goddess Modron on the Priestess Isle off the west coast of Wales. And, people who think of Avalon being in Glastonbury and the Tor, it was. Things that I learned while writing these books is what we have learned to demonize our past, our ancestral past, which really isn't a great thing if you think about it. So people have been talking about ancestral healing for a while.
Right.
Um, and so she says, she had to wait while the centuries unfolded as her lady sisters and the Druid priests foretold, because her story has the power to change beliefs and empower potentials. So, she says, if I had spoken, the veil over truth had become so thick that my words would have ricocheted off dense walls of fear or been buried in the quicksand of despair. And, this was really true. And this is why when I was upset about it taking so long for this to come out, and, Goran had gotten me in touch with the guides, I apologized profusely. And they said, no, no, no. We were just trying to hook you. Now is the time you can get this book out there.
Mm.
And I was like, why? And they said, well, the fabric of the church is ripped and it will never be as strong again. And what they meant by that wasn't the teachings of Jesus. They were talking about the control over the dogma.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of days later, the Pope resigned
Mm-hmm.
and there was big scandal. So in the days when Mists of Avalon was published, the Catholic Church could still tell the people, you can't read these books
Right.
and you can't see this movie. So that's what they meant. They can now it won't fall against the fear of, being in a weird place. So, she says finally this time cycled to when it was seen, because they're in the other world watching. You said
Right.
there's lots
Right.
of things that aren't right. In the birth of those unwilling to be bruised by centuries of lies. And they seek the hidden truth. And for this purpose, I have come now to part the veil between our worlds, and I will reveal my name and tell my story. You will know it is true, for it is your own. A memory reawakening in the crystals of your bones. That's
Mm.
where your ancestors live. Now, this is all indigenous. This is
Right.
an indigenous time. So it doesn't have to be Celtic. And I've even had a friend in New York who's a Jewish girl who's, she's the head of pool department at a gym in New York. I mean, she's not my target audience,
Yeah.
you know, and she's just loving this, you know. And when she finished book 3, she said, Shellie, you know, I mean, I didn't want this to end. And so I know that what she said, this is them showing me that she
Mhm.
was telling the truth, because you could be a Native American, you could be any culture at all. You're going to go back to a time that they knew about the earth, and they knew about the fact that we were in it all together, all creatures. It's just like the Native Americans are the closest thing, or the Peruvian shamans, to that life, that we
Right.
can still see that they did that, and
Mhm.
honoring. So
Right.
the first book is her awakening to her being here again. She's a reincarnated priestess. And I found out, I did so much research afterwards, and I found out that reincarnation was taken out of the Christian theology in the late 500s by
Right.
Emperor Justinian. So even early Christianity, and even Jesus and John the Baptist speak about reincarnation in the Bible, but they just took it, they just kept changing things, different.
Can't control people if they think they can, they got another chance.
They got another chance. It's
Oh,
bad business.
yeah, bad for business.
So, book 1, she has her first initiations and her first teachings while she's still living in the area where she was born, which is Southeast Wales. And then she arrives on the Priestess Isle. Book 2, Priestess of the Realms, I downloaded, I'm sure, on my trip, because I got to stand on a cliff looking at this
Mm.
island, which has a tor also, and a flat area, and had mist on it.
Mm.
And I suddenly was standing there, and nobody was around. They all went down to the beach. And suddenly I'm doing this invocation to the 4 elements, and it's powerful. I have no idea what I said, and then my body's rocking when it's over. And I thought I should take a stone, and I found a stone that said it was okay. So this stone from the cliff where I was, I would hold it for a little while. Then of course, I had to put it down so I could type. And the whole training, pretty much all of her training is given in book 2.
Mm.
And she has the training with a lady, a priestess, but also otherworldly guides. And she has experiences and journeys. It's not like you're just sitting there hearing teaching. I mean, she gets these in pieces, and then she has an experience. So, and I, thinking like, everybody else, I know everything there is to know about elements. Nuh-uh.
Wow.
So then which we know she's got a part that she's got to play, because the Druids had a secret plan. How do we preserve our knowledge? Because if they wrote it down, they were very learned. Some of them had gone to Greece and studied with philosophers. It's not what we thought at all. And so, but they knew that if they left written, it would be distorted. Then nobody would be curious in
Hmm.
the future. And now they're curious. So we have the Neo-Druid movement.
Yeah.
And they know that they're just trying to bring back what they can imagine that they might have been doing, because they left nothing. But she was part of the plan of how they would preserve it. So she doesn't get to find out until book 3. So book 3 is, she finds out, she has her last piece of training, and she finds out, and then she's doing it. And it's a beautiful, there are love stories in here. She's got 2 great loves in her life, and she has to at some point choose between them.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, it's got the whole,
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a wonderful movie. It's got that,
Yeah, they couldn't do it as a movie, but it's for you, it's going to be it's going to be a movie. You'll be in.
right.
And I'm very grateful because I feel that the reason that they are speaking it now is to help the divine feminine energy regain its equality with male energy. We
Hmm.
also have that thought that when they were worshiping a goddess, they didn't worship like we think that word means.
Right.
They celebrated, they honored and celebrated. The next festival and the solstice festival is the sun. And so there are male honorings. It was, they knew that you couldn't get a lamb without a ram.
There you go.
So they,
Yes, agreed. Yeah, that's
they
the
were,
lamb without a ram.
you
Yep.
couldn't, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So have people in Wales, have you gifted these books or let them know what you've
Have,
done, what you've created?
yes, a couple of people and a couple of people in the UK. Someone in the Celtic Source group has read them. She loved them. I have, I mean, I have the desire to do a tour there.
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
know a couple of people who would be fabulous speakers because I did work with, after I was already in it, a man named Gwilym Morris Baird, who is a professor. He's Welsh, and he's a professor of Welsh history and mythology. And that's where I found out that all the goddesses that we know their names of were not the ones from this time frame. So I
Mm.
only call it goddess in here mostly. I don't use Rhiannon and stuff. And somebody interviewed me on the Welsh goddesses, and what he said was they started writing in the 12th century. I mean, there was really literally Wales was not um, writing. And then they have this Mabinogion, which is where Stevie Nicks apparently got the song Rhiannon from. She
Oh,
found
interesting.
a little book of it, but I never knew that. And what Gwilym said was what the goddesses, the sovereignty goddesses of the Mabinogion will show you what happened to the goddess when she met the patriarch. Because most of them have very sad tales. They suffer.
Yes.
And a woman who had interviewed me on these, she wrote a book called something about, the subtle abuse of the feminine. And it's true, you grow up, right? You're in a culture and you are expected, you don't notice an abuse because it's so integrated into life.
Who they were, what they knew. Well, what about now? How do we
Oh,
bring that back now?
well, that's what's going on now is that the abuse is so intrinsic. And just like you can inherit the gifts of your indigenous culture,
Mhm.
because the Ireland had much more, they had much more open um, in their still celebrating and still having that they actually, the Druid priestess who decided to become a nun is now the saint and finally got a saint day. I mean, I think the Irish were really more like, okay. Whereas the Welsh were like shielding the energies, protecting it and shielding it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I feel that it is a time when the re-empowerment, when you read, as a matter of fact, I have a few people who want me to do a class, a book class when we get to the teaching, so that we can explore some of the things, some of the gifts of the teaching, some of the tools of the teaching as a group energy. And that way we can realize, we can do this. We have that ability. And we're women and we have power.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's a feminine. I mean, we meet Merlin. He's the most amazing. I mean, he's like you never saw him. before. I love him very much. I mean, he's like the divine masculine.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that in the book also, in the way he teaches and how he brings her forward. He's one of the first ones to bring her into her power. Um, I think it shows the potentials that we could have and that are our birthright.
That's right. Indeed.
And if we were talking earlier about, the energy and the fact that we can, a lot of people, you communicate with your pets and
Mm-hmm.
they communicate with you. And you know that you communicate with your plants and they communicate with you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like really deepening that experience into everything.
Connected to everything, yeah. Which actually makes me think something I had said earlier about AI not having a soul. Well, we're actually, yes and no, right? I mean, that's a part of us. I mean, we're connected to everything, including that. So I think,
Except right now, as you said, we're connected to this.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
that's, so we have to make choices every now and then to put it down.
right,
And even choices to have visits with people and talk to people
right.
instead of texting and
Exactly.
emojis.
Yeah. And more nature. Nature is huge.
Yes. And being lucky to live in this area also.
Right.
We're going up to Terra Nova if all goes well with weather and everything on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Walk the labyrinth they have there is like really wonderful.
Yeah. I have never been to Terra Nova. I've got to make a trip there one of these days.
Okay.
It just
Well,
hasn't
that
happened,
could
but I
be a
know it's
nice
spectacular.
gathering to create.
I beg your pardon?
That would be a nice gathering to create.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've heard spectacular things about it. I just hasn't happened, and I'll probably be like, ah. So I
That's
want
I,
to go
I
ahead.
saw a fairy there
Oh wow.
my first year that I was here. And they have them in the garden, and that's a long story, but that was my last Substack post because I think it was a day or so ago, it was World Fairy Day,
Hmm.
and it got me thinking, and that's how the book I wrote, The Greatest Enchantment, the novella, The Forest Fairy Adventure, that's how it started because I saw that,
Oh my goodness.
and I wasn't the only one who saw it, so that helped.
So what was your experience when you saw it? What was it a
You
inner
want me to tell
experience
you?
or
I'll
did you
tell.
physically
I'll
see
tell
it?
you. I'll
Okay.
tell you. Well, we heard that between Mother's Day and Father's Day, you go to this friendship garden and you sit in silence and you go like it's sunset and then the night falls and that alone would have been a fabulous experience because I had never really sat in it's very forested area and just had the sounds of the forest watching it get dark. So then, some orbs came, and the woman that I came up, I think you might have met Kathleen Diver. She's passed over now, but she had been so good to me. And she was with Carol Schaefer and another woman. The four of us were there. And they didn't see, Carol and I are on the left, and we're all looking straight ahead. And they didn't seem to see the orbs at all. The orbs came past, one of them stopped here. And, I know that people say it's a kind of a moth or something. My Native American teacher said no, but that was beside the point. There may be different kinds. So I was very worried. I had this, codependent feeling for Kathleen. Like, I hope that she gets to see something. I was like really in like, please, can she see something? When I came in, the skeptic I told you I have inside saw
Yeah.
little lights, colored lights, red and blue. I think they were red and blue. Um, and I thought, I wonder if that's a gimmick they do. They make something happen with this light. But I forgot about that, and orbs were like, we were definitely enchanted by them. And so while I'm like, please let Kathleen have some, a red light comes up, stops right in front of her, like arms length ahead of
Mm.
her. I'm here, so I'm looking at this too. And while we're staring at this red light, it starts to shift. And there was a fairy,
Wow. Wow.
a
Wow.
fairy with wings,
How
little
wonderful.
lady, little person. And she like never, I mean, that was the highlight of her whole life, I think.
Oh my goodness, I would
I mean,
imagine.
and it was like for her,
Oh, that's
you
sweet.
know. And then it started to like fade, and it became like it went up on a branch of a tree, like as a white, it was white then. And so, I was very like, whoa, about it. But the skeptic, I saw it, but did I see it? I don't know if you know Janine Cronin. She was
Oh,
very,
sure. Yeah.
yes. Janine, I mean, as soon as people heard that they could come between May and June and see fairies, I had visitors.
Yeah, I bet.
So I would go up. I never saw a fairy again, and I don't think any of them did. But Janine is a photographer, right? So we were going up to the labyrinth, and because we got there earlier, and we saw a tree. Oh, there is a tree. And she got a feeling about the tree. And she said, I just want to stop here for a minute. I just want to take a few shots of the trunk of this tree. So she stood with it and just went click, 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 and did not move. And she was from the same spot. And then when we looked at the photos, there was a red light, and in each photo, it was moving. So
So she
gimmick,
had her
no.
experience.
Choice to be visible, yes.
That's very cool. Well, I've had a lot of green orbs, and
Oh,
just
yeah.
recently with the moon, the strawberry moon last week, I took some pictures and there were some green orbs in it. But a very cool thing after my mother passed, she was very much a nature person.
Mhm.
And I mean, Molly, my sister, was taking pictures inside the house, outside. I mean, globs of green orbs in and out. And so, she was very tuned into nature, and it was a very cool thing. So I definitely, what a great experience. That's very amazing. And I'm so happy Kathleen got to experience that.
She was like something about the fairy got into her.
Yeah, that's
She
beautiful.
had been very like, she had just retired, and things were going on in the family and stuff. And she was kind of not the woman that I knew in Florida. She was, there was a sad a place. And after that night, no, Katie barred the door. She was she was full tilt back in her Orisoma work, and going to festivals. And
Good for her. Wow, that's neat. Well, I want to move just a little down on another direction. I know you're a huge follower, I think a fan of the Royals, and it seems as though there's wow. Do you have any
wow,
words on that? I mean, that could be a whole other
the royal
conundrum.
family. Well, from living in England, I mean, they were like kind of funny to me there. But, Charles is like a month older than me. And my
Mm-hmm.
parents got married at the same time that his parents got married.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mother thought I was going to marry him, I think,
Of course.
so she
Yeah,
prepared me for nothing in life at all. If I was going to be waited, I
of
don't know.
course. What
I mean,
happened? Yeah.
so I found myself drawn to England again, as I said, and I had gone back, and one of my friends got me to see the Trooping of the Color, and we went to the Royal Ascot races, and it's like, but I have an affinity for him specifically, which was very unpopular, I must say, but he's sensitive. I mean, this man, he was into environmental and organic, sustainable gardens before it was, they were just laughing at him,
Mm-hmm.
20 something years ago or something. And so, you know, the issue with Diana made him look evil, but I mean, he was forced to marry someone and she fell in love with him. So he must have been being pretty nice to her at that point. But, you know, it wasn't going to work out. But I found that they were really good to use in teaching about astrology because you could take their charts and they would be someone that you knew who their brothers and sisters were, you knew who their mother and father was, you knew events in their life and what they were like. So it was easy for me to show that. You can see his mother with his moon in Taurus in the house of a parent because she was a Taurus. You know, so I kept, you know, kind of knowing. Um, I think that I'm very glad that he was able to finally become king. He waited a long time. I watched The Crown and I thought the ending was phenomenal. It was powerful.
Right. I did.
And, you know, I mean, I think, you know, I'm not into the idea of royalty, but you know, I think William has done an amazing thing. He has this Earthshot Prize every year. If you haven't ever seen one, you can get them on YouTube. They search the world, have people write it and tell them what they're doing to fix things. And they have these phenomenal ways of cleaning ocean, you know, doing all kinds of things you can't imagine. Yeah, now I'm in prison. I have, like the light lines are coming, or maybe something else is coming in. So, I mean, I think that as royal family, they're more progressive, William and his father. Of course, his mother was also, but I think that the focus that went on her, she learned about that from being with Charles and his causes, you know,
Mm.
that it was a thing to do, even, you know. And so, you know, it was a tragic thing that happened. And the whole thing with Harry and Meghan, I mean, I'm writing a chapter on what they call a centaur, like Chiron's a centaur, and I'm writing about his wife in a group book. And so I used Megan because Shriklo holds the space for transformation. That's her job. She's real magic. She's really something. And I was looking at their marriage chart and everything because people know. Again, so to use people that people know. So I don't follow them that much, but I follow them to the extent of how did you see it in astrology? So
Well, that is, you know, it's very intriguing. I mean, I'd say that uh you couldn't make this stuff up, as they say, what's happening there. And, you know, with with Charles' illness and then Catherine and now Fergie. I mean, that's
oh,
pretty.
Fergie also.
He
See, I
also
know
has
more
cancer.
up on
Yeah.
it than she
Uh,
does.
yes. And so it's kind of like very interesting, you know. I mean, and you know, I just wish them well. There's a lot of different uh, thoughts about them, and you know, but to me, they're human beings, and they were put into a environment that's not an easy one. That's the bottom line.
I don't think it is easy, but I will say that we're in a paradigm shift where all hierarchical thought is going to go down the tubes.
Mm-hmm.
And hierarchical thought is that anything is better than anything else. You
Right.
know?
I will agree with that. And
So they're like the dinosaurs
mm-hmm.
that are the last gasp of it. I think, you know, corporate people have taken those positions also. The great billionaires are the new royals, you know.
Right.
So, but it's we see we see so much of the try to hold on to that is what we're seeing now. But the paradigm shift came in January of 2020. I'm seeing two twos. So it was January 2020, a conjunction that hadn't taken place in that sign until since um, the middle of the 1500s when Martin Luther and Henry VIII were succeeding in breaking the hold of the Pope.
Mm.
So that was the biggest paradigm shift of that era that you could have ever imagined. But it takes a long time. I mean, they were still trying to assassinate Elizabeth I so they could get a Catholic back on the throne. So we're, again, like I said, that we're in the dawning of the age of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
We're not fully anywhere. So we're just in the beginning. But I remember Greg Braden, when you brought him up here,
Mm-hmm.
talking about, that's when I saw you again. You had
Mm-hmm.
brought him
Mm-hmm.
to Flat Rock.
Right.
And he did the Hopi prophecy stone.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that happened. The two lines of stick figures that were going together, and then one went this way and fell off, and then the others kept going. But he
Mm-hmm.
told us the path of the heart was the path that would continue on. So I believe in that. I can see that that could be. That's what I'd like to see.
I do, I hold that vision, and really that's the only thing that will survive ultimately, I feel. But as we wind down, there's so many other things we could, we've already gone for a while, but I wanted, obviously 2024, and I watch a lot of podcasts from every angle. I'm a curious person. I don't attach a lot of meaning. I try to be, but here we are, a big year.
The
Obviously, tonight
election.
is the big debate. So astrologically, what the heck is all this happening? And in
Well, I've been doing eclipse lectures,
Mhm.
and I don't just do people as examples. I also do organizations.
Mhm.
A couple of years ago, the Republican National Conference was having eclipses all over a planet in their eighth house of shared beliefs and resources. And I said, and it was Uranus, which is a change and breakup. I said, the Republican Party is going to go through a complete, who are you? And people who were, sort of grounded Republican, mid-zone Republicans weren't going to be able to relate to what was happening. So there was going to be, and so it is still the chart of the Republicans in November does not have anything that really shows winning. The Democratic National Conference does. I'm just telling you this. I don't like to predict really,
Right.
but the lawsuits that have been happening are because Saturn in Pisces is bringing karma into the house of justice. And so somebody's getting a lot of karmic hits, and that is weakening. And people have done his solar return, and the sun, which is our big personality, which he has up elevated in his birth chart, is in the 12th house, which is a house of institutions or hospitals, or it's backward. And Saturn, the karmic teacher, is on the midheaven. So when people see that, they sort of say, well, that doesn't look like somebody who is, so he is suffering, I think, physically at this point. Biden also has some issues, and I'm not sure he'll be able to make it to be the candidate actually on that day, but he might. And if he did, I think that because of the DNC chart and because of his chart, it would be more likely. And
Yeah.
that's, because I couldn't, I don't really usually do that. And a lot of astrologers do it. And somebody's going to be right and somebody's going to be wrong.
Well, and I look at it as a big cosmic uh event. I mean, this is
This
all
one
bigger.
is.
This is bigger. These two guys are they've got their cosmic roles, and this is bigger than they are. I mean, there's something huge are transpiring here that I don't think know yet what that is.
Right. And with the paradigm shift,
Mhm.
there are more people who want to be dictators. That's
Mhm.
the older, that's the old, like, I'm secure here because I'm a dictator, and the people
Mhm.
feel secure because they have a dictator, although usually they're not so happy with them once they're there. But, like ask Portugal, where I was.
Yeah.
Like, thank God, thank God. So, it's just humans, like you say, opportunities to grow.
Yes, another wonderful growth experience. And yeah, well, I tell you, we'll have to get together and have another conversation down the road. But as always, you're so insightful and interesting. And
Thank
I
you.
appreciate and value all you continue to do. And for everyone listening, and give me an hour or two, but I'll have your contact information up on YouTube and Facebook. And
Well,
yeah.
they can only find the books on Amazon, or they can go to the Crystal Visions shop in Fletcher. She stopped.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that's a great bookstore. Support local. That's always a good thing. And is the link to Amazon though on your website with the books? Yeah.
Yes.
So everything is on the website. So I'll just direct people there and they can find it. Or if you're local up here in the Carolinas, you can go to Crystal Visions, buy Shelley's book, and those gals. I think I just heard they celebrated their 25th anniversary. Was it?
They had a big milestone. I couldn't remember if she said 30 or 20
Yeah.
something. I guess
They've
it could.
been holding the light for a long time. It's a
Yeah, that
beautiful place.
was.
Yeah. Well, Shelley, thank you so much. And thanks
Thank you
everyone
for
for
having.
tuning in. And we'll keep shining the light, and let's just continue to bless the world, and only good will come.
The
And
light is
so it
coming.
is, right?
The light
Yes.
is coming.
The light is coming. I feel it. And thank you,
Whoa.
Shelley. It's always, oh yeah, the light is coming for sure. Okay, peace and love, everybody. Thank you, Shelley, and we'll see everyone soon. Bye-bye.